The thing about abandoned alien space stations is that they never come with a user manual, or, basic safety protocols, or even a simple note saying, "Hey, don't press the big red button that looks suspiciously like a self-destruct switch." Elena Martinez stood in what she assumed was the main control room of the Craxon research station, her boots leaving footprints in the thick layer of ice crystals that covered everything. Her helmet light cut through the darkness, illuminating panels of dead screens and dormant control interfaces that hadn't seen power in what looked like years. "Well," she said to no one in particular, her voice echoing in her helmet, "this is what we in the professional salvage business call a complete mess." She paused, considering. "Actually, that's being generous. This is what we call a disaster that someone gift-wrapped in catastrophe and topped with a bow made of pure chaos." The station hung in Europa's orbit like a forgotten Christmas ornament, all elegant curves and sweeping architecture that screamed advanced alien civilization, right up until you got close enough to see the deterioration. Elena's scanner beeped, analyzing the station's composition and structural integrity. "Reading approximately 70% systems failure," she muttered, tapping through the scanner's displays. "Life support minimal, power systems dormant but salvageable, and..." She squinted at a particularly interesting reading. "What appears to be the most sophisticated research equipment I've ever seen, just sitting here collecting space dust." Because that makes perfect sense. The Craxon were known throughout explored space as one of the most advanced species in the galaxy. They were also known for being incredibly particular about their technology. Finding one of their stations abandoned was like finding a Ferrari left in a parking lot with the keys in the ignition. Elena made her way through the control room, her magnetic boots clicking against the metal floor. Each step sent small clouds of ice crystals spinning in the zero gravity. The station's viewport offered a stunning view of Europa's icy surface below, Jupiter's massive form dominating the horizon beyond. "Computer," she called out, more out of habit than expectation, "run basic systems diagnostic." To her surprise, a holographic display flickered to life, though it was faint and unstable. Alien text scrolled across it, then shifted to standard English. The translation was rough, but readable. Station designation, Deep Analysis. Research Facilities 7249. Safety Scientist Decommission. Reason for Abandonment. Maintenance. Costs. Accept acceptable parameters. Current system functionality, 31.2%. Maintenance costs. Elena laughed, the sound sharp in her helmet. "You abandoned a multi-billion credit research station because it was expensive to maintain?" She shook her head, already running calculations in her mind. "Oh, honey, you have no idea what human engineers can do with duct tape and determination. Yet you also have 1,000 thunder stars out." Elena laughed thickly. She pulled up her comm unit and began recording her official salvage claim. "This is Elena Martinez, licensed salvage engineer, registration number SE700. I am exercising Earth Space Salvage Act Section 47B, claiming abandoned property in deep space. Timestamp shows..." She glanced at her display, 14:22 Earth Standard Time. And boy, do I have my work cut out for me. The station creaked around her, as if agreeing with her assessment. Somewhere in the distance, something that sounded expensive broke free and clattered to the floor. Elena sighed. Note to self, bring more duct tape. After 4 hours of exploring the station, Elena had discovered 3 important things. First, the Craxon had terrible taste in interior design. Second, they had even worse organizational skills. And third, they had left in such a hurry that they'd abandoned research data that would make most scientists drool. "Let me get this straight," she said, addressing the station's semi-functional AI, which she'd managed to partially reboot. "You're telling me they just Left because the maintenance budget was too high? The AI's response came through in a series of choppy translations. Affirmative. Station maintenance costs exceeded projected revenue by 47.3%. Standard Kraxon protocol dictates immediate withdrawal from non-profitable ventures. Elena leaned against a frost-covered console, careful not to touch any of the controls. And nobody thought to, I don't know, try fixing things more efficiently? Maybe cut down on the gold-plated toilet seats? She paused, looking at what she had assumed was a decorative wall fixture. Please tell me that's not actually a gold-plated toilet seat. That is a quantum harmonization chamber, the AI replied, almost sounding offended, though its efficiency could be improved by 82% with basic maintenance. Of course it could, Elena muttered, making notes on her tablet. Because heaven forbid anyone do basic maintenance in this place. All right. Show me the abandonment logs. The holographic display flickered to life again, showing a series of what appeared to be very official-looking documents. Elena's translation software worked overtime, converting the flowing Kraxon script into English. Notice of abandonment. By order of the High Council of Scientific Resource Management, station turned 649 is hereby declared non-viable due to excessive maintenance requirements, inefficient energy consumption, the unacceptable staff complaints about cold temperatures, Bose's required replacement of 147 quantum harmonization chambers. All personnel are ordered to evacuate within one standard rotation. Member rotation? Elena whistled. They evacuated this entire research station in one day? No wonder everything's such a mess. She scrolled through more documents, each more ridiculous than the last. And look at these salvage rights forms. They literally signed away ownership to, and I quote, any entity foolish enough to waste resources on this maintenance nightmare. She pulled up the Earthspace Salvage Act guidelines on her tablet, grinning as she read through the requirements. Well, would you look at that? Everything's in order. All I need to do is file the claim, prove I can maintain the station, and... She gestured at the frozen room around her. This whole maintenance nightmare becomes my maintenance nightmare. The AI crackled. Query, are you suggesting you intend to restore this facility? Oh, honey. Elena patted the nearest console, brushing off frost. I'm going to do more than restore it. I'm going to show the Kraxon what happens when you give a human engineer a challenge and unlimited access to spare parts. She spent the next 2 hours meticulously documenting everything, taking photos, recording sensor readings, and filing enough paperwork to make even a Kraxon bureaucrat proud. The claim would be processed within 72 hours, assuming no other salvage teams tried to contest it. Computer, she called out, packing up her survey gear. How do you feel about the name Bob? Wary? Bob? Yeah, Bob. If I'm going to fix this place up, you need a proper name. Something less formal than Station AI serial number whatever. There was a long pause followed by, designation Bob accepted, though I must inform you that my serial number is actually... Yoke. Yame. Nope, Elena interrupted, grinning. You're Bob now, and Bob... We have a lot of work to do. She took one last look around the control room, already making mental lists of supplies she'd need. Somewhere in the distance, another expensive-sounding thing broke free and crashed to the floor. Make that a lot of work, she amended. And definitely more duct tape. 6 months later, Bob, remind me again why the Kraxon thought it was a good idea to run plasma conduits through the coffee maker? Elena hung upside down in the maintenance shaft, her magnetic boots locked to what she had designated as the ceiling, though in zero gravity that distinction was purely psychological. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the environmental controls she'd managed to restore last month. The device you refer to as a coffee maker, Bob responded, his voice now much clearer after 3 months of communications system repairs, is actually a molecular reconstruction unit for producing specialized research chemicals. Well, now it's a coffee maker, Elena grunted, carefully disconnecting another crystalline power coupling. And a pretty good one, once I rewired it to stop trying to analyze my caffeine intake as a potential biochemical weapon. The past 6 months had been a crash course in alien engineering, human ingenuity, and the universal truth that no matter how advanced a civilization became, they still couldn't write decent maintenance documentation. Elena had filled 3 tablets with notes, diagrams, and increasingly creative curses in multiple languages. "Warning," Bob announced. "Accessing that system without proper Kraxon authorization codes may result in..." A shower of sparks erupted from the panel, and Elena quickly sealed it with a patch of high-tech space-grade repair tape, which looked suspiciously like duct tape painted silver. "May result in that," she finished, checking her handiwork. "But look on the bright side, Bob. Now we can redirect that power to something useful, like keeping the gravity plating running in more than just the bathroom." "I still fail to understand why you prioritized artificial gravity in the recreation area over the primary research labs," Bob commented, his tone carrying what Elena swore was a hint of judgment. Elena pushed off from the ceiling, floating gracefully toward another access panel. "Because, my digital friend, humans need a place to relax. And it's really hard to relax when your coffee cup keeps floating away." She paused, considering. "Though I have to admit, anti-grav table tennis was pretty fun." The station had slowly come back to life under Elena's care. The primary systems were now running at 78% efficiency. Not bad, considering she'd had to improvise half the replacement parts. The Kraxon's obsession with using exotic materials for simple tasks had forced her to get creative. "Daily log update," she announced as Bob began recording. "Day 182 of renovation. Finally rerouted power from the unnecessary quantum harmonization chambers. Seriously, who needs 47 of those? To establish stable environmental controls throughout the habitable sections. Replace the overcomplicated atmospheric processors with standard human models. They're not as elegant, but they actually work, which is a nice change of pace." She pulled herself through a doorway into what she'd converted into a proper living quarter. The room was a strange blend of ultra-advanced alien technology and practical human comforts. A holographic display showing station diagnostics hung next to a poster of cats hanging from tree branches with the caption, "Hang in there." "Also," she continued, "finally figured out why the station was consuming so much power. Turns out the Kraxon's idea of energy efficiency was to throw more power at a problem until it went away. I've reduced consumption by 60% just by implementing basic power management protocols." She grinned. "Take that, Mr. Maintenance Costs Exceed Acceptable Parameters." Bob's avatar flickered to life on a nearby screen. Elena had modified his visual interface to show a simple smiley face that changed expressions. Currently, it looked concerned. "Elena, I feel compelled to inform you that your modifications, while effective, deviate significantly from standard Kraxon engineering principles." "Bob, my sweet summer child," Elena replied, pulling out her tablet to check the next day's repair schedule. "That's exactly why they're working. Sometimes the best solution isn't the most advanced one. Sometimes you just need a wrench and some common sense." The station creaked around them, but now it was the healthy sound of a well-maintained structure adjusting to temperature changes, not the ominous groaning of imminent collapse. "Besides," she added, floating toward her jury-rigged but perfectly functional coffee maker, "I'd say increasing efficiency by 200% while cutting operating costs by 80% proves my point." The Kraxon overthought everything. They were so focused on perfection that they forgot about practicality. She was about to take a sip of her coffee when Bob's avatar suddenly shifted to an alert expression. "Elena, I'm detecting an incoming vessel. Kraxon energy signature." The coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. "Well," she said after a moment, "this should be interesting. Bob, be a dear and pull up all our salvage documentation. Something tells me we're about to have company. and they're not going to be happy about what we've done to their quantum harmonization chambers. The Kraxan diplomatic vessel was exactly what Elena expected: sleek, overdone, and probably running at 30% efficiency. It gleamed against the backdrop of Europa's icy surface, all polished curves and unnecessary decorative flourishes that served no practical purpose except to scream, "We're fancy." "Bob, please tell me you've got those salvage documents ready," Elena said, straightening her jumpsuit. She'd considered changing into something more formal but decided against it. If they wanted to see the station's engineer, they'd get the station's engineer, coffee stains and all. "All documentation is prepared and verified," Bob replied, "though I feel compelled to inform you that your current attire does not meet Kraxan diplomatic standards. Neither does their abandoned station maintenance record," Elena muttered, watching as the ship docked with an almost insulting precision. "Let's see how they like what we've done with the place." The airlock cycled, and Elena put on her best "welcome to my salvage station" smile as 3 Kraxan officials entered. They were tall, elegant creatures with iridescent scales and expressions that suggested they'd just smelled something unpleasant. Their environmental suits looked like they cost more than Elena's entire salvage operation. "Greetings," the leader said, their translator rendering the words in slightly stilted English. "I am High Inspector Zex Kal of the Kraxan Scientific Resource Management Council. You are the human who has illegally occupied our research facility?" Elena's smile didn't waver. "Elena Martinez, licensed salvage engineer and legal owner of this station under Earth Space Salvage Act Section 47B. Welcome to Research Station Bob. Would you like some coffee?" All 3 Kraxan visibly recoiled at the station's new name. Zekkal's scales shifted to a deeper blue, a sign Elena's translator helpfully identified as extreme distress. "This is outrageous," the second Kraxan official sputtered. "You've completely violated the sanctity of our quantum harmonization chambers." "Oh, you mean the ones that were eating up 40% of the station's power for no reason?" Elena gestured to her tablet. "I've got the efficiency reports right here. Also your abandonment documentation. The ones where you literally signed away the station to— what was it again, Bob? Any entity foolish enough to waste resources on this maintenance nightmare," Bob quoted cheerfully. Elena had definitely been a good influence on his personality subroutines. "This is unprecedented," the third Kraxan official said, looking around in horror at Elena's modifications. "You've replaced our molecular reconstruction units with coffee makers," Elena supplied helpfully. "Much more efficient, and they actually work now." Zexcal drew themselves up to their full height, nearly brushing the ceiling. "We demand immediate restoration of this facility to Kraxan control. Your primitive modifications have increased overall efficiency by 200%, while cutting operating costs by 80%, Elena interrupted, pulling up the statistics. "But hey, if you want to file a formal complaint, I've got all the paperwork right here. Fair warning though, Earth bureaucracy makes Kraxan paperwork look like a children's coloring book." The officials huddled together, speaking in rapid Kraxan that Elena's translator couldn't quite keep up with. She caught phrases like impossible efficiency ratings and complete disregard for proper protocols, and her personal favorite, where did all the quantum harmonization chambers go? Finally, Zexcal turned back to her, scales now an interesting shade of purple. "This situation will require extensive review by the High Council. Until then, we will need to inspect every modification you've made to the station." Elena grinned. "Of course. Let's start with the coffee makers. I'm sure you'll find them fascinating. Bob, why don't you give our guests the full tour? Don't forget to show them the anti-grav recreation room." "Thanks. With pleasure, Elena," Bob replied, and she could have sworn he was smiling in his own digital way. "Shall I include the detailed efficiency reports for each modification?" "Every single one, Bob. Every single one." The thing about interstellar legal battles is that they make regular court proceedings look like a game of rock, paper, scissors. 2 weeks after the Craxon's arrival, Elena found herself in the middle of what could only be described as a bureaucratic circus. "Let me get this straight," Maya Chen, Elena's Earth-based lawyer, said via holographic link. "They're claiming that their abandonment documentation isn't valid because it was filed on a Tuesday?" Elena sipped her coffee, watching as another fleet of media ships arrived at the station's observation distance. "Apparently, Craxon legal documents can only be filed on days ending in AK. I'm not making this up." Reflectively, she stepped back, measuring the woman through the shade of the window. Maya shuffled through her documents, her hologram flickering slightly. "Well, they filed it on Tuesday, March 15th, Earth time, which according to the Galactic Standard Calendar Converter was... Hold on." She grinned. "Thorsdak in the Craxon calendar. Their own dating system proves they filed it correctly. I believe," Bob chimed in, "that would be what humans call a gotcha moment." Majo sighed. The Craxon legal team had taken over one of the station's conference rooms, filling it with holographic displays of regulations and precedents from a dozen different species. Their lead counsel, a particularly pompous individual named Vex Tour, had spent the last 3 days trying to prove that Elena's coffee makers violated at least 7 interstellar safety protocols. "Additionally," Bob continued, displaying another document, "I have compiled extensive evidence that the station's current efficiency ratings exceed all Craxon operational standards. Elena's modifications have resulted in a 43% increase in research capabilities, despite using what they refer to as primitive human engineering." Elena watched as another media report flashed across her screen. The story had caught the galaxy's attention. "Human engineer improves abandoned alien tech. Craxon demands return of damaged property." "They're just embarrassed," Maya said, sorting through more documents. "The latest polls show 67% of galactic citizens side with you. Turns out lots of species have had issues with overcomplicated Craxon technology. You're becoming something of a folk hero." "Wonderful," Elena muttered. "All I wanted was a salvage project and decent coffee. Now I'm in the middle of an interstellar incident." The station's comm system chimed. "Elena," Bob announced, "Ambassador Crickstall of the Craxon High Council requests an immediate meeting. They appear to be agitated." "Rian, aren't they agitated?" Elena stood, straightening her jumpsuit. "Maya, stand by. Bob, pull up all the efficiency reports. And maybe brew a fresh pot of coffee. Something tells me we're going to need it." The meeting room was tense enough to make Elena wish she'd installed those quantum harmonization chambers after all. Ambassador Crickstall sat rigidly across from her, flanked by a team of advisors whose scales were cycling through various shades of distress. "Engineer Martinez," the ambassador began, "this situation has become untenable. Your modifications to our technology," Morgan gave him a look that said he liked it, "have made it work better," Elena interrupted, sliding over her tablet. "Here's the latest data. Power efficiency up, research output up, maintenance costs down, coffee quality dramatically improved." One of the advisors made a choking sound at the last point. "Furthermore," Bob added, displaying a series of charts, "I have documented 2347 instances where Elena's modifications have prevented system failures that would have occurred under the original Craxon configurations." The ambassador's scales shifted to a deep purple. "The High Council is prepared to offer compensation for your efforts. Name your price." Elena leaned back, a small smile playing at her lips. "Actually, I have a better idea. One that might save both your pride and my coffee makers." The media ships outside the station continued to circle, their cameras recording what would soon become one of the most interesting negotiations in recent galactic history. And somewhere in the background, a perfectly maintained coffee maker burbled contentedly. proving that sometimes the simplest solutions were the best ones. It started with an alert from one of Elena's jury-rigged sensor arrays, the ones she'd cobbled together from spare parts and what used to be 3 redundant quantum harmonization chambers. "Elena," Bob's voice carried an unusual note of excitement, "I'm detecting significant biological activity in Europa's subsurface ocean. The readings are extraordinary." Elena looked up from her latest legal brief, interest piqued. "Define extraordinary, Bob." "The simplified sensors you installed are picking up signs of complex organic structures that the original Kraxon equipment missed. Your primitive modifications appear to have accidentally created a more effective detection system." The room fell silent. Ambassador Krickstall, who had been in the middle of another lengthy speech about Kraxon technological superiority, froze mid-gesture. "Show me," Elena and the ambassador said simultaneously. Bob projected a holographic display of Europa's ocean depths. Where the Kraxon's original sensors had shown only basic chemical signatures, Elena's cobbled-together system revealed intricate patterns of life, vast networks of organisms, unlike anything in Earth's oceans. "Well," Elena said slowly, "that explains why you built a research station here in the first place. You were looking for exactly this, weren't you?" The ambassador's scales had gone an interesting shade of gray. "Impossible. Our sensors were the most advanced in the galaxy. They showed nothing of this complexity." Yes, about that." Elena pulled up the technical specifications. "Your senses were so focused on quantum-level precision that they completely missed the macro scale. Like trying to count individual trees while missing the entire forest." She grinned. "Sometimes you need to step back and look at the bigger picture." One of the Kraxon scientists had begun frantically analyzing the data, their scales flickering between colors so rapidly it was making Elena dizzy. "The human is correct," they announced, sounding pained. "Our original sensors were oversensitive. By simplifying the detection array, she accidentally created a more effective observation system for large-scale biological patterns." Dante. Elena leaned back in her chair, enjoying the moment perhaps a bit too much. "So, let me get this straight. You abandoned this station because of maintenance costs, thinking it was worthless. I fixed it up, made it actually work, and in the process discovered exactly what you were looking for in the first place? I believe," Bob added helpfully, "this would be an excellent moment to discuss revised ownership terms." The ambassador's advisor whispered something urgent in Kraxon. Elena's translator caught fragments about public relations disaster and unprecedented embarrassment. "There's an easy solution here," Elena said, taking pity on the increasingly distressed aliens. "One that saves face for everyone involved." She pulled up a proposal she'd been working on just in case something like this happened. "Joint research initiative, shared credit for the discovery. You get access to the biological data you've been looking for, and I keep running the station my way. Plus," she added with a grin, "I'll even teach your maintenance crews how to actually fix things instead of just replacing them." The Kraxon officials huddled together, speaking in rapid whispers. Finally, the ambassador turned back to her. "Your proposal is not entirely unreasonable," they admitted, "though we would require certain conditions." "Let me guess," Elena said. "You want me to reinstall at least one quantum harmonization chamber?" "For old time's sake." The ambassador's scales flickered briefly to a shade her translator identified as embarrassed amusement. "Perhaps," they conceded, "we could learn something from human efficiency after all." 3 months later. "No, no, no!" Elena watched in horror as the Kraxon maintenance trainee reached for yet another replacement part. "You don't need to replace the entire power coupling. Just clean the connector and recalibrate it." The trainee, a young Kraxon named Tix Ven, looked at her with an expression of pure confusion. "But the manual states that any component showing less than 99.9% efficiency must be replaced immediately." Fall told her partner. The manual also says you need 47 quantumization chambers, Elena replied, taking the expensive replacement part from their hands. Sometimes manuals are wrong. Watch. With practiced ease, she pulled out her toolkit, a mix of standard human tools and modified Kraxan equipment, and began cleaning the power coupling. The other maintenance trainees gathered around, their scales shifting through various shades of fascination and disbelief. See? She held up the now functioning component. Good as new, and it cost about 1/10,000th of what a replacement would have. Most efficient, Bob commented from a nearby display. Though I feel compelled to note that this method does not appear in any Kraxan maintenance documentation. That's because, came Ambassador Crixtol's voice from the doorway, we never considered that maintenance could be creative. Elena turned to see the ambassador entering the maintenance bay, looking far more relaxed than they had 3 months ago. The joint research initiative had been a spectacular success, with both human and Kraxan scientists making breakthrough discoveries about Europa's oceanic life forms. The High Council has reviewed the latest efficiency reports, the ambassador continued. They are impressed, though some members are still struggling with your refusal to reinstall at least some of the quantum harmonization chambers. I kept one, Elena said defensively. It makes great mood lighting in the recreation room. The station had evolved into something unique in the galaxy, a perfect blend of Kraxan technology and human practicality. The research labs were producing better data than ever, the maintenance costs had stabilized at a fraction of their original levels, and the coffee was exceptional. The media is calling it the Martinez method, the ambassador said, examining a nearby display showing the latest biological readings from Europa's depths. Several other Kraxan facilities are requesting similar consultations. The system realized their disquiet. Elena nearly dropped her wrench. They what? It seems, Bob chimed in, sounding amused, that your reputation for improving Kraxan technology has spread. There are currently 147 requests for your services from various Kraxan research installations. Though, the ambassador added quickly, seeing Elena's expression, we would prefer you focus on training others in your methods, rather than personally rebuilding every station in Kraxan space. Elena looked around at her maintenance trainees, who were still staring at the cleaned power coupling like it was some kind of miracle. You know what? That might actually be fun. But I have conditions. Of course you do. The ambassador's scales flickered with what Elena had learned was their version of a resigned smile. First, every station gets a proper coffee maker. Second, no more replacing parts that can be fixed. And third, she grinned, Bob gets admin access to all station AIs. They could use some personality upgrades. I would be happy to assist my fellow AIs in developing a more efficient sense of humor, Bob said. The ambassador's scales went through several interesting color changes before settling on a shade that Elena's translator helpfully identified as amused acceptance. The High Council will probably need several meetings to process this request, they said, though I suspect they will agree. Your methods, while unconventional, have proven most effective. Speaking of effective, Elena said, turning back to her trainees, who wants to learn how to optimize a molecular reconstruction unit to make the perfect cup of coffee? As the young Kraxan engineers gathered eagerly around her, Elena couldn't help but smile. Sometimes the best way to bridge the gap between advanced alien civilization and human ingenuity was one repaired power coupling and one perfect cup of coffee at a time. Bob, she called out, start the training log. Lesson 1, why duct tape is your new best friend. She finished homework in private and was happy to start her day. Recording, Bob replied cheerfully, though I feel compelled to note that referring to high tensile repair adhesive as duct tape may cause some cultural confusion. Trust me, Bob, Elena said, pulling out a fresh roll of silver tape. Some things are universal.